and she is great. Uh, she 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 tells people a reading, and you might think, nah, it's not going to happen. But everything she says comes true. I'm telling you. But anyway, I
That
got
is
that spill out.
well. I know. I don't know. This has. I don't know how you classify what I'm going to tell you. But back when junior high school, me and my friend, we'd always walk up on the weekend. There was a store a few miles away from where we lived. It was they sell magic stuff, trick stuff, all that stuff. And we watched a movie that day, one of those horror type movies you watch, the B movies on TV. Now, we're talking about,
Yeah, I love those movies.
yeah,
Yeah, I
back,
like those movies.
this was before I went in the service, so it was like early, well, maybe, it had to be mid '60s. Anyway, we watched this movie about voodoos, dolls sticking pins in it, casting spells. So we decided, okay, let's go up to the magic store, and we bought a voodoo doll. And we had this one teacher in junior high school we hated, or I hated, with the biggest passion. So we got this doll. And I found where my mom kept all her sewing, kit and those big long sewing needles. And I stuck all these in his stomach and stuff, saying, die, 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 and all this weird stuff, right? And we said some voodoo words we wrote down during the movie. Well, come Monday, he's not in school, teaching his math class. We find out he's in the hospital. He just had appendicitis. So I don't know if that had anything to do with the voodoo thing. But then, after he healed, again, we did not like this teacher at all. We went and he spent a fortune restoring, I can't even remember what type of car it was. But it was a car that he thought more of than human life, pretty much. And we went out.
Oh, wow.
We went out and got a model of the car, painted one of those tester models. We painted it the same color, right? And then we smashed it and said, okay, you're going to get in a big car crash, all this stuff. About a week later, coming to Denny Junior High School up in Seattle, they had a football field there, and there was about a 75-foot bank going from the road down to where the field was. Somehow his car went over the bank and down.
Oh,
and
no.
Now, he only ended up with a couple broken bones, but it totaled out his car. And that was enough of my magic stuff or voodoo stuff or anything like that, because it scared me, especially when you're, like a young teenager in junior high school.
Yeah. Well, I learned at an early age not to mess with something that is paranormal that you don't know about. With my mother, of all people, bought for us kids, we were I was probably in high school, freshman, something like that. But the rest of my siblings were younger. I was the oldest in the family, but she brought home a Ouija board one time. And the only ones that could work that Ouija board was myself and my next sister. She's second oldest. But we got pretty good with that thing. And, it gets kind of scary after a while. That planchette or whatever they call it that moves around that has the 3 legs on it. You still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just trying to remember. I wish you wouldn't have mentioned the Ouija board, okay? I wish you wouldn't have done it.
But there's something to it. It's bad. Don't
bad.
Mess with it unless you know what you're doing, because this thing, after a while, before I used to go move around a little bit, we'd call out the letter, it was no big deal. We could do read it in our heads, But after a while, my mother had to sit on the couch with a tablet and a pencil, and we had to call out the letters, and they were moving so fast. All we did was call out the letters, and then after it was done, we went back and divided it into words, sentences, and paragraphs. That's the way this thing was. And I realized it was getting pretty nasty, actually. My sister had a friend that lived up the street, and she came down one night, and we were messing with this Ouija board, and she knocked on the door. And that crazy Ouija board stopped right in the middle of a sentence that said, "Who's that?"
Oh, wow.
We said, "Well, it's so-and-so that lives up the street." And he said, "Well, I don't like her. Tell her to leave." I said, "Well, I'm not going to tell her to leave." And it said, "Well, you better tell her or else." I said, "Or else what?" And it spelled out something about going to hell. And I said, "Well, I'll see you there first." And I was smoking cigarettes at the time, and I took out my cigarette lighter and I burnt the corner of the board. You know, that thing quit working for my sister and I. It just quit working. We got it out about 20 years later or so, and it started working for us again, but it was never the same. I don't know if maybe a lot of the bad things that happened to me in my life was because of what I did, but you don't want to mess with those Ouija boards. Really bad.
Well, Alan, really bad. I didn't know that my first wife, she was a former Miss Washington. I met her. This is going to sound really bad. I met her, and 2.5 weeks later, we were married. I really, I didn't know the difference between love and sex probably at that age. And,
guys,
one day
that's guy stuff.
I came home one night after work, and here's a whole bunch of strange people in my living room. I never seen them. I didn't know who they were. And they had a Ouija board going. I found out my wife was a witch. And they had this Ouija board going, and it was crazy how, what stuff that was going on. And it really upset me. And, I came originally from, my grandparents were Mennonite. My dad was Catholic, my mom was Protestant. So, it was really a mixed, religion. I saw that thing, and I snuck it away when she was sleeping. I donated it to a thrift store about 10 miles away and didn't tell anybody where it went. Well, about 2 days later, I come home again, and they're staring at me. And I look down, there's the same Ouija board. And they said, "Hey, we found the Ouija board in a thrift shop." And I tell you, some weird things that just went on and on. It was 2.5 years of pure living hell. She lived by what that Ouija board would say to do. And it's basically, I really feel this, that a Ouija board tells you things you want to hear at the start, to make
things you know to be true.
Yeah, things you know to be true and all that stuff. And after it hooks you, that's when it starts feeding you a whole bunch of bad stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I learned the same thing. What a Ouija board will tell you the truth when you, like, how many kids do I have, or what's my mother's name, or something like that. It will tell the truth, but when you start asking it about the future, it will lie through its teeth. Nothing it says is going to be true, and if you base your life on what that thing tells you, you're in a world of hurt. I'm telling you right now, you don't ever want to use a Ouija board for your, how do I put it, your guide for your life. You really don't.
No, unless you want to go to prison.
Yeah.
I just, it's strange because, it's also funny. My very first radio show I got on in 1976, I was hired to do Top 40, Alan. Near, God, I'm trying to think of the name of the little town, but it was up by Vancouver, Washington. And I was supposed to do Top 40, and I go there, and everybody stares at me when I walk in the door, and they go, the owner wants to talk to you. So I go in there, and he goes, "We're not doing Top 40. So you got two choices. You can go look for another job, which I just moved there, so, and rent an apartment. Now, what am I going to do? Or you can learn how to do talk radio. And, here I was young, and I didn't know what to talk about. You didn't know much about world events, but I noticed in the newspaper right there that there was a local occult, and people missing and all that stuff. And, the police were looking for people. So I started my first show in the paranormal talking about occults and stuff like that. And as it's grown for all the years, I've done pretty much all paranormal. And, it's certain things I learned. One, don't get involved with a Ouija board. Don't get into any occults.
Yeah.
And, and if you rely on any information you get from a Ouija board, I hate to say it, your life is not going to be happy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I took that one Ouija board. My mother, I guess, took it and put it away somewhere. I don't know how my sister got it, but my other sister got it. And I was at a family thing. This was years and years later. I mean, I had been married, 5 times, but
sounds familiar.
It was about, had to be pretty close to 30 years, from the first time I saw the Ouija board. But anyway, it was a family get-together type thing, and my younger sister, she goes, remember that Ouija board we had back when we were kids? And we go, yeah, She said, well, you and Linda, can you and Linda go ahead and see if you could get it to work again, I said, well, I don't know. The last time we tried it, it wouldn't work at all. But anyway, we sat down, everybody got quiet, and sure enough, it started working again. And the only thing is I said, well, what questions do you want to ask it? And my younger sister said, ask it what Tom used to call me, his favorite name, what he used to call me. Tom was her husband who had died from cancer just a short time before that. He was an open door gunner in a helicopter in Vietnam when they'd spray that Agent Orange on the forest, on the jungle. And
I know about Agent Orange. I can tell you what it does later on to you.
Yeah, well, it used to blow back in his face and everything. He got throat cancer, and it was very nasty. He died from a hemorrhage in the bathroom of their home. But anyway, she said to ask it what Tom used to call me, his favorite name, and it spelled out baby. She broke down and started crying. She was bawling almost uncontrollably. And that I realized then that that's what that board does. It does whatever it can to hurt somebody. And it did it to my sister that night. Maybe she shouldn't have wanted that answer to that question, but still, I realized then that it was not something to play with. And I don't know what my sister did with the board after that. I think she probably threw it away, burned it, or whatever. But I hadn't seen it since then, and I don't mess with them. I'm deathly afraid of them, to tell you the truth. Especially now, since I'm doing medium stuff. I just don't want it around where maybe it might be drawing in some evil stuff for me. I just don't want it. I don't need it, and so I don't.
But that's that's a good move, because otherwise you could get possessed. I mean, that's all the demons in the stuff. Yeah. That's who they are. I don't really think that, when you're talking to your departed grandmother or grandfather or your parents on a Ouija board, you're not talking to, I hate to say it, you're probably talking to demons, and they're trying to pull you in by giving you some information that they, and then that's when they get you hooked into it. The only way you can really get rid of a Ouija board, I hate to say it, is burn it. Burn it up to nothing.
Yeah. Burn it to ashes.
Yeah. Don't take it to
any part of it.
Don't take it to a thrift store, because all of a sudden one of the people will find it and they'll be madder at you yet.
Yeah. Gary, they used to sell those things for kids as games, board games, way back when they first brought it out. Wasn't it Bradley that brought them out or something like that in the beginning? Bradley board games, I think it was.
Milton Bradley.
But they used to sell them in the toy stores and stuff. I couldn't believe that.